Hi, I'm Dr. Carolyn Wiley, founder of Rose and Pearl Publishing, and this is the Publish Pearl podcast, where we show you how to turn your message into a book that builds authority, attracts the right people, and multiplies your impact long after you've written the last page. Are you struggling to be seen by your ideal client? Or maybe it's your book sales and they're flatlining and you're thinking, if only more people knew about this book, it would not be flatlining right now. Then today's episode is for you, as we're going to discuss an amazing framework for becoming seen and known as the expert in your niche. Welcome back to the Publish Pearl podcast, the show where we help Christian authors turn their books into movements. Today's guest is Jasmine Bloemhof. She is a USC-trained publicist, media strategist, and founder of Bloom into the Spotlight, a PR consultancy helping coaches, consultants, authors, and speakers become recognized industry authorities. With more than 20 years of experience and 1,500 plus media placements secured across television, podcast, national media, she has worked with both global brands and emerging thought leaders. Jasmine is the creator of the Bloom method and is widely known as the publicist other publicists hire when high-profile media results are needed. She lives in Rancho Palos Verdes, California, and serves clients nationwide. Today, she's going to pull back the curtain on what PR actually is, what it isn't, whether you need a massive national stage to make it work, and how to know if you should do this yourself or bring someone like her in to do it with you. Welcome, Jazz.
Thank you. That was such a fancy introduction. Sold.
Sold.
Thank
Yes.
you so much. So yes, at USC, go Trojans. I'm an LA based publicist, but by all means, I work with folks all across the United States. And I've been doing it for a long time. Yeah. So 20 plus years. I worked my way up from, an intern at an agency, going to school at night, working during the day, and then went all the way up the agency ladder to VP. And I like to joke that, I was managing large budgets for PR and advertising for brands for like Kawasaki and Toshiba at a very young age. I was still too young to rent a car. So often, I think I was around 23 and I think you have to be 25 in California. So sometimes the client would send me off to like, a press trip or whatever. And I would go to rent the car and realize, oh, this is awkward. I I'm not old enough to rent a car, but you're trusting me with these huge budgets and these huge, marketing initiatives. But it really gave me an opportunity to really learn a lot and see a lot at a very young age. And most of my mentors were, had been in the business for 20, 30, 40 years. Same with the professors. They were all just really savvy and had seen PR change over the years. So I've been a sponge for a very long time in the agency world and left it on my own accord to do something different with my consultancy, Bloom into the Spotlight. And at some point, I just really realized that the people who really needed real PR the most were experts and authors and trailblazers with really cool stories. And often agencies had overlooked folks like that because maybe they just weren't big enough accounts or big enough retainer holders. And that's exactly why I started my business, was to just reach those folks.
All right, well, let's dive into one question that I had when you and I very first met over a year ago now, which is like, what is PR? Because, we'll see the media version of it's somebody that follows the celebrity around and makes sure all of the media happening around them is the right thing. Or we see the side that is, I'm putting out fires because something bad has happened, with a story. But what is it really? Help us define what this really is.
It's a lot of things. I mean, when I first went into, I didn't know what PR was, way back when. I actually had thought I wanted to be a journalist. I had a professor my senior year of school. And I was very, very young. I did undergrad in 3 years. I was kind of just I've always been a great student. And I love to write. And he said, "Hey, Jess, why don't you come to the LA Times with me? Come shadow me." Interestingly enough, he had gone to my high school, which was strange. I never, usually met anyone who had gone to my high school, but my journalism professor was an alum, and he really took me under his wing and brought me into the LA Times. And I was so excited, and then my heart kind of broke a little, because as soon as I got into it, I realized this isn't the right fit. I
Mm.
knew I was really privileged and blessed to be at the LA Times. I mean, my mom was really proud, but I was running around and doing these stories and shadowing reporters and thinking, there's something missing. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. These are, really crazy hours. I was, a little nervous about some of the areas I was having to go into as a
Mm.
reporter. I was thinking about, I want to be a mom, and I don't know how this fits into the structure of a family that I wanted. And so there were some things that were off. And there was one thing that he had noticed about me. The professor had said, "You're so entrepreneurial. You've taken some business
Mm.
classes. Why don't you walk across the aisle to the PR department and just get a taste for what they do, because it's such a good blend of the storytelling part that you love, and the business, the parts of you that are just it was just a part of me. I was the girl with a lemonade stand and stuff growing up,
Mhm.
um, fundraising and doing a lot of things like that. And it was just very natural for me. And I went across the aisle and I was like, oh my gosh, I had never heard of PR, but I want to be a publicist. And before I knew it, I had enrolled in a graduate program at USC, and um, I was a working student, so I'd work during the day and go to school at night. And there were a lot of classes on what PR was. There's PR 101,
Mm.
there's crisis PR, there's fashion PR, there's celebrity red carpet PR. And I knew then that that was not really what I was going for. I didn't want to be a publicist that was working with celebrities and divas and all of that. That wasn't the right fit. And I knew that I didn't really want to be at the parties and the galas and the, all of that stuff. Um, but there were parts of PR that were really appealing to me, and it still kind of hinged on storytelling,
Mm.
impact, influence, strategically building opportunities around like an end goal, in your business or whatever it might be that you're working toward. So to me, PR is, it used to be when I first started 20 years ago, we'd send out a press release on the fax machine and we would just hope somebody would pick it up, and your placements all sort of looked the same. They were kind of all across the board, the same headline, and just maybe picked up by different folks. Um, TV placements were really reserved for famous celebrities and not everyday experts. And so I didn't really touch TV placements a lot in the beginning. And I think around the time of COVID, I noticed a huge change in the
Yeah.
types of experts that media members were looking for. And the stories that were being amplified were not as, they were more relatable and not as cookie cutter as I'd seen in the past. They were less promotional, and they were more about the human parts of people, more lifestyle focused. I saw a lot more opportunity for, um, just experts who had been in their field for a while to
Mhm.
get some press, really. And that was around COVID, where things were changing a little bit. Budgets were pulling back. Everyone was, working from home, and they were a little more open to remote interviews, which I think helped access to media. You no longer had to go into a TV
Mhm.
studio. Podcasters were starting to really boom and pick up some credibility and things. So PR to me is, it's a lot of things, but it's very strategic, and it's a lot of storytelling, and a lot of relationship building. It's showing up very consistently. I think that sometimes maybe people do their own PR and they just stop with the one placement, and they don't realize that it's a
Yes.
snowball. That we take that, it's even if you win, let's say, Good Morning America or something, that
Right.
Good Morning America placement is probably not going to move the needle for you if you don't know what to do with that. So
Exactly.
leveraging every media win, no matter how large or how small the audience, is just really, really important, and not something that I think everyone's really comfortable and knowledgeable around. So it's strategy and follow through. It's not like a single announcement and holding out on a prayer that it'll be seen by the right people. Um, so that's a roundabout answer on what PR is. It's a lot of things. But it's press that gives you the credibility and the authority of a third party, and it really separates you probably from your competitor, because not everyone's doing PR for themselves these days. It's kind of a missing. I think a lot of people are doing social media. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are doing paid ads, and things like that. But the actual organic, relationship driven PR is sort of, I think it's just a mystery for people on how to actually do that for themselves. So those days are over, though. There are ways for authors or entrepreneurs or solo experts to really use the media as a tool for establishing their credibility, so that I like to tell folks that are considering working with me, I say, it's kind of like the room already knows you. PR
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
really introduces you to folks, so someone can be on your website and watch your media placements if you've put them on there, and they can get a feel for who you are before they've even met you or before they've gotten on that sales call. And it really shortens the distance between getting a yes from them, and your pitch, because they already know who you are and they already trust you and believe you because, hey, you were on Fox or you were on
Right.
so and so's podcast, and things like that. So PR is a lot of things, but it's definitely a credibility booster that is available to everyone.
I love that. So then, beyond just exposure, when you have an author who is working with a publicist, what are some tangible business outcomes that might change for them beyond just, like you said, that exposure?
Yeah. So, I mean, just today I was on the phone with a past client who is launching a book in the fall. And she had said to me, Jazz, like, I haven't been working with you for the past few months. We worked together for 6 months and she had a lot of success. She's like, I am getting a lot of invitations to other interviews. She isn't pitching herself anymore. People are
Mm-hmm.
finding her. Things have changed a lot. Not to get too into the AI part of it and the tech part of it, but we used to say, oh, we'd Google ourselves or we'd Google
Mm-hmm.
something.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to work with a book coach, I'm like, let me Google so and so's name and see if that's someone that I want to work with potentially, or what. I'm looking for the good and the bad. Show me what
Right.
what we've got. And so when you Google someone's name and you see a lot of, press mentions, I think there's a sort of, it kind of makes me feel like, okay, this person's, they've been working in this field for a while. I look at the dates of the placements. I look
Mm-hmm.
for, what kind of quotes they, might be attributed to them. I look for things like that. I'm like, do we align on our value set?
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for their digital footprint. It used to be we would just Google those people, but now with AI, people are using like ChatGPT differently. They're going into ChatGPT much like they did Google. They're
Right.
going into YouTube in the same way and kind of using it as a search engine. People are really looking at people's digital footprint before we get on the phone and we take the time to commit to a
Mm-hmm.
discovery call or whatever. And so I think what is happening is like the AI search engines, whatever we want to call them, platforms, ChatGPT, they are looking for, they don't see you unless you have earned media, essentially. So if
Right.
someone goes into ChatGPT and they say, hey, who is the best publicist in LA? I'm going to be invisible in that
Mm.
search result, in that recommendation, if I haven't done the work and gotten some earned media. And that is why I think PR is having a big heyday right now. All of the PR pros are like, yes, finally, because for so long, one of the hardest objections I'd have to overcome and trying, to work with folks was, Jazz, what's the ROI? How can I measure
Mm-hmm.
if my PR is successful? And now I'm like, listen, I really don't know that you can afford to sleep on the value behind earned media placements. And when I say
Right.
earned media placements, I mean free press, not paid opportunities, not, paying for a byline or something in an article. I mean, really organic media mentions and features and things. And um, so yeah, I think that PR is working for folks when you start to see, oh my gosh, I have leads coming to me, maybe because I'm findable now. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm findable in these platforms that folks are using for their research on the front end. And I also think that for a lot of people that have a personal brand come to me because they are ultimately looking to speak for a fee. They're looking
Yeah.
to get on stages. They're looking to do, paid retreats with, a handful of, powerful people, and or they're wanting to even do some corporate stuff. They want to be on a stage
Mhm.
for, big corporations, and, maybe inspirational speeches, or I even had some pastors who were like, I just want collaborations. I want more. How
Right.
do I get there? And I think that in this age of podcasts becoming more video based, and
Mhm.
um, also TV just being more accessible as far as being able to, interview via Zoom and things like that. I don't know of any other more powerful way of really showcasing sort of the essence of who you are as a speaker than a 3 to 5 minute segment on a TV news show, or a 45-minute conversation on a podcast, where a producer can, or an organizer for an event can go on and see you and get a feel
Mhm.
for, okay, she knows how to speak. That would resonate with our audience. They get a really good feel for you. And so most people that work with me, we're going for those broadcast placements, and then we're stringing them together. And I think I call it the Bloom Reel, but it's essentially a 60-second professionally produced reel of your speaking, kind of a taste of what it looks like for you to be speaking. And you can use that reel as your pitch to
Mhm.
organizations and say, hey, I'd love to speak for you, even for free to start, let's say. Or, I'd love for you to just maybe cover my travel to the event, but here's, a snippet of what I look like on stage. And it looks so much better than pitching an event and not having any of that,
Right.
as a foundation. So really sets you apart and helps you to compete. So, um, you never know, and I've had another client. He was a franchise owner, and someone saw him on a morning news thing. And next thing you know, the person was opening a franchise in their city because they were like, I just really liked the founder. I liked your interview.
Yeah.
I liked what you had to say. It kind of humanizes a big business if you see the founder or the CEO and you feel like, you resonate with their personal story. So you never know like what it's going to lead to. And all press is evergreen. Once you
Yes.
get, this is the problem when you get bad press,
Right.
lives forever. And it's a whole thing. Like, how do I, and crisis PR was a type of PR I didn't really particularly want to do because, that was when I was in grad school. There was a big lawsuit with Johnson and Johnson, and that was one of our class we were dealing with. How do you? I think my professor was one of the consultants on that case, but there were some issues. This was before. This is going to date me, but before they had child-proof bottles, and there
Right.
were some issues with things with Johnson and Johnson, and it was a whole field day for crisis PR. Um, but, once stuff is out there, it is very hard you can't erase it. You just have to kind of work to overcome it.
Yeah.
But if you're doing really good PR, a good PR campaign would be a lot of different types of headlines, a lot of different types of mediums that really showcase all of the parts of you and your business and your story. And um, I don't know of anything better than PR. Personally, advertising falls a little flat because you can only show one part of yourself, and it's so clearly paid for that I
Right.
think most consumers are really savvy to that at this point. We kind of just don't even see it anymore. We just
Mhm.
drive, an ad comes up on Facebook and we're just like, oh, that's an ad, keep scrolling. Where, if you're listening to a podcast and someone comes on and you already like that podcast host and you trust them, and you like the content they put out, it resonates, it hits differently,
Absolutely.
so anyway.
So, a lot of authors that I work with, they really assume that PR means landing some of these big national stages
Mhm.
that you talked about. And I've had clients who've been on big national stages. And so then their question is always, well, can you do that for me?
Mhm.
And my question to you as the expert would be, is that the kind of placement you have to have to
Mhm.
get results? Or is that a myth that results only come from those big national stages?
Yeah, so we talked about this a little bit in my masterclass last week. When I first started in PR, everyone wanted the Oprah magazine or
Mm-hmm.
her on her book list or whatever it was. And um, not everyone, but a lot of folks would say, "Gosh, I just really want that Oprah placement," or all these top tier. I get this a lot with, "I want the Today Show," or "I want, Good Morning America," or "I want Joe Rogan," or whatever it might be. These
Mm-hmm.
fancy names, and um, two things on that. Sometimes we don't realize that a lot of those are actually paid placements. So, they have monetized this, and they've become savvy, and it's very much an income stream. The Joe Rogan, last I checked, was $50,000 for an interview. People are paying for that placement.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing is true often for book placements in digital outlets that are really large. They're looking for affiliate links. They're looking for some sort of way to like get a little bit of income from running your particular title or whatever it might be. So I like to tell people that, yeah, of course, a good publicist is going to weave some of those super top tier dream media outlets into your pitching, because by all means, it has happened before where someone
Mm-hmm.
has never done any PR. I mean, we see this sometimes when you turn on the Kelly Clarkson show or Ellen or whatever it might be, and you're like, no one knew about that pickle
Right.
company until Ellen featured it, and then it
Right.
just took off or whatever it might be. So, and who am I to tell you that, your story is not going to
Mm-hmm.
resonate with the producer there? So let's pitch it. But I do think that good PR really is just getting you in front of actual people that might really buy your book or hire you. And it's not just about having that logo for your highlight reel.
Yeah.
So really, thinking about like a niche podcast with, let's say, 2,000 listeners who are deeply engaged in your exact kind of core client dream audience can totally outperform a huge outlet where most people just would scroll right past you and
Yeah.
maybe not read the article or whatever it might be. So it's really more about fit and not size. And then understanding that even those little itty bitty placements, maybe at the beginning of a PR campaign, are going to snowball, and they're going to work together to really powerfully sort of position you in this new space. And so I never turned down an interview in those first 1 or 2 months. Like, to me, it's like, let's take these for what they are, as long as they're the right fit. And then, and never don't play small forever either. Like, definitely start to expect to see the caliber of your placements, increasing and you become better. Those are
Right.
great kind of, it's practice for the big one that's coming. And, but yeah, so I think smaller and mid tier can totally move the needle in a way that I think people are surprised by. I had a client who we were just talking about this, and we were talking about the power of podcasts, and we were a little surprised at, she was doing some interesting things with her link and things for her podcast interviews. And for some of the larger podcasts, they weren't moving the needle into book sales and things like that.
Yeah.
And then for these smaller ones, she was like, man, that 500-person audience, I had a lot of people reach out, not just for book sales, but people were really invested in kind of her message and what she was bringing forward, and offering, collaborations and, email
Yeah.
takeovers and things like that. So, um, I think something that has also set authors and people with personal brands apart from the bigger brands is, you really, if you're given an opportunity in the media with maybe one of these mid-tier or smaller outlets, you really have a lot of opportunity to express gratitude and to also have
Mm.
a human conversation following that particular opportunity. So being really easy to work with in the process, as far as coming up with your talking points and providing assets and maybe creating some freebies that are really intentional and personalized to that audience. And then following up and being like,
Yeah.
anything more of value that I can offer? Is there, are you hearing anything? Is there something that I can bring forward? And just being kind of having the servant heart can really come
Right.
across in those smaller spaces. And so, um, I'm a huge fan. I have seen people's businesses change completely by consistent small placements leading to mid tier. And then you do get noticed. I think, if you believe in that, if you're just ready for that big one and you're prepping for it and you're just taking every opportunity for what it is, I think you get rewarded with that. Like the right
Right.
people are going to hear you and they're going to connect with you and they're going to, um, bless you with an opportunity, maybe even that wasn't even on your vision board to start with. Like, oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought of that. Like, so yeah,
I
there,
think
that's,
it's interesting that you say that because I have seen that literally happen
Mhm,
with my authors.
mhm.
And if I have a podcast, like you said, with 500 people, I've seen 20 and 30% of that audience convert to book sales
Yeah,
for the right fit author on that podcast.
mhm,
And I've seen 2 book sales
that's right.
for a huge regional audience. And
Hmm.
it's like, what? It's
Yeah,
because of the fit. And wouldn't
mhm,
you rather the 200 book sales
that's
than the
right.
2?
That's right.
And when we see someone on one of these big national stages that was an earned media placement, often we think, oh my gosh, they got there overnight. And sometimes maybe that was the case,
Mhm,
but more often than not, we're not seeing the 10 years that they put
that's right.
in the small placements that they said yes to, that
Yeah.
then got them to the mid tier, that then now they're on these stages.
Mhm. And that's right. Like I've seen that more probably in my agency experience where I've had clients that, get a little crabby and they come to me and they say, hey, I saw this a lot in the personal finance space, like
Mm,
um, maybe accountants and wealth managers and things like that. But they'd come forward and they'd say, hey, I turned on the news and I saw so and so on the news and I am so much better than that person. How come I didn't get that slot? Like, kind of really just being a little grumpy about it and not realizing that, well, gosh, you're 2 months into your campaign. You haven't done what you're not seeing is that was years of effort
mhm,
and energy. You don't know that person's story,
mhm.
and so and that's something even myself as a business owner, I have to tell myself, like, don't compare yourself because that this might be the end of this person's journey, or they may have 4 more years in on that particular skill set. Like, give yourself some grace,
Exactly.
and understand that there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. And sometimes, your niche, gosh, it may be that it was the right timing for that particular person to get that,
Right.
opportunity. It just might the calendar just might align ever so perfectly, or there may be breaking news that calls for a particular expert in that field. You know, it's interesting. There's and there's also, I think when we talk about my Bloom method, we talk a lot about thinking about what hooks and angles make sense for you and your
Mhm.
audience and things. And something that has a lot of power is kind of counterintuitively looking at um, what is everyone in my industry saying about this particular thing, and how can I um, offer something slightly different or slightly something a little more, um, just a little more provocative or whatever your
Mhm.
is. It's got to be on brand with you. But there is a lot to be said for people that are able to really see an opportunity and quickly push into action, not sit on that pitch for a whole long, don't sit on it for too long because that opportunity will quickly bypass us. So timing is everything. It's a perfect pH of topics in the news and things like that. So yeah, but you're absolutely right on that. PR is a funny thing, like, but it does, there is a lot to be said for having a strategy and then knowing when to pivot, knowing
That's
when
so
something
good.
doesn't feel right and then pivoting. And I think probably your clients probably are, when you're writing a book, just start to write, get it on the page. Don't fret about the sentence structure. Don't fret about, did I already say something like this? Like, just write the pitch, get it out there, and just do it. Do that first podcast interview, see where you're at so you have a little bit of data, and that, you can just kind of massage your messaging as you go. Um, so,
That is so good. And then we're going to talk about the Bloom method because I want to dig into that. But before we do, let me just ask the real fundamental question. Like, Gay, I love that you're going to share the framework with us, but can an author actually do their own PR? And what does that actually realistically take?
yeah, so I think a couple things. So I think strategy and systems are super important in PR. And they're really obvious things, that it's not, you don't need to have, of course, the best publicists have access to a fancy database with all of
Mm-hmm.
the most recent press outlets and all of the, we were just talking earlier about there's been a lot of hiring and firing and movement in media. Producers are constantly switching networks, and podcasters, there's a lot of churn as far as, is that show even out there and things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that anyone can do PR. I know that when I started PR for myself, I didn't have any relationships. I was just a girl, who
Mm-hmm.
could write and who could communicate. And I think empathy is really important when you're doing PR, and just kind of understanding that these journalists and these podcast hosts and these producers are very, very busy, and their inboxes are, I mean, just thinking about how many emails. One girl, I asked one journalist, I said, how many do you get a day? She said 2,000. I can't keep up. I mean, 2,000 emails a day. So the subject lines are very important to her.
Mm-hmm.
Just being very personal, very brief, but very, very intentional about sort of the verbiage that you're sending over is very important. And sending a pitch at the right time is very important. So
Mm-hmm.
of day, and follow up is very important. And so I tell a lot of people, just even in my group program that are work with me, or even my own clients, I say, hey, the pitching hours for me are the morning.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I function. That's how not because I love the morning, but because that is when folks are checking their inboxes and they are looking for the next story for tomorrow morning or for next weekend, or whatever it might be. So you meet, people where they're at with their work preference. And so everyone should be pitching in the morning. They should be following a particular template as far as like, this is what a pitch should look like. It's not an essay. It's not sending over your resume. It's a very,
Right.
intentional, quick little email. And it's a, attention grabbing, subject line. It's knowing who you're pitching and really leading with that value add. So,
Yes.
not what can you do for me, producer, podcaster? Here's what I can do for you. And if that doesn't work for you, I'm willing to, massage that and tweak this accordingly. But really being open and flexible to whatever their needs might be, and respecting that. And also really recognizing that they are receiving 2,000 emails a
Mm-hmm.
day. So with that, follow up is super important. If you send a pitch out and no one bites back, it may be that your angle is not the best, or it
Mm-hmm.
could be that everyone is just really, really, really busy and they need that second, third, fourth follow up in a
Right.
few days. And I also think being very cognizant of what is happening in the news cycle, particularly in TV, is really important. So not being deaf to, turn on the news. What's going on? I never pitch on Fridays because I have found that most people are wrapping up the work for that week and it's hard to get
Mm-hmm.
placement. So let's just not pitch on Fridays. Let's just do our other work. And by all means, if there's breaking news, you're not going to get them to turn heads on a book and a
Exactly.
Friday sandwich,
Exactly.
unless you can tweak it. I have had some, there were a couple school shootings last year, terrible thing. But if someone is able to speak to grief or trauma or emergency response, things like that, you can tactfully uh, position
Connect.
yourself as
Yeah.
an expert, and um, you have to be very careful. Not every expert is the right fit for that. You have to be
Mm-hmm.
very good at what you're doing. Therapists are very good for this type of thing. But some breaking news stories, they are looking for quick experts. But you may be leading, it's interesting because you may be getting those placements, and it's not the appropriate time to be pitching your book. It's
Yeah.
just for your name recognition. It's for the practice, for getting that introduction to that particular producer and saying, okay, I came in, within 15 minutes notice, and I gave you some smart, insights for this story. When the time is right, I'd love to come back to you and tell you a little bit about my book or about my
Yes.
course or about the message that I'm really trying to get out there. And they're more receptive. So you're starting to break down the barrier of that 2,000 email inbox a day, and kind of they're like, oh, that's a warm relationship. I want to go back to her because she was so giving um, in that breaking news story or whatever it might be. So I hope that answers that.
Absolutely. And that's what I tell my authors all the time to, and I call this my serve first
Mhm.
framework, where I tell them when they're pitching, serve first. If you are reaching out to a producer and you know Mother's Day is coming up and you
That's
have
right.
an amazing book about parenting, which I
Mhm.
literally have a client who did, I said,
Mhm.
don't pitch the book. Pitch
Yeah,
what they need. They need a story about Mother's Day. Pitch a story that's going to help them for Mother's Day fill the slot that their boss is asking them to fill.
mhm.
Then they'll be happy at the end for you to say, and by the way, if you want to go deeper, I have this book.
That's right.
Serve them, and then
Mhm.
they'll let you do what
Yeah.
you need to do as a very minor piece of
Yes.
that.
Yeah, a good pitch is never leading with the product.
Exactly.
You are the product. Your
Exactly.
your brand, the essence of who you are. You are the human, and then, oh, by the way, I have a book. It's sort of just a part of your bio. It's a part of who you are. I have a book, I have a business, I have this, curriculum, whatever it might be. So yeah, so that's a good segue into kind of what the Bloom method is and why I
That would
created
be
it.
great. Let's go
Because
there.
yeah, let's go there because I think there's just this big mystery around how do you do
Yes.
PR? And I think there are a lot of people that still sort of spray and pray, I call it, where we're just somehow getting a hold of a mass email list and sending out this very promotional email one time, walking away from the computer and then just thinking either PR doesn't work for me or, um, that was a lot of work for nothing or whatever it might be, or I don't know the right people to get anyone to open my emails or whatever it is. And that might be true, but what I think it has more to do with is that you're just not really employing the right method in your and working it into your system of your business, because I
Mhm.
think that PR can be done efficiently. I know this because I have 5 kids and I run this and I am getting a lot of placements for people. I mean, I am getting so many placements that I actually have to have a folder in my inbox that's like for later, vet
Yeah.
these later, like, maybe wait until, another time or something to introduce these particular opportunities, because you do have to have a certain cadence to your placements as well. It's best to not have just one big energy burst of media. It's best to kind of trickle them strategically throughout your month or whatever it might be. But if everyone were to follow the Bloom framework, which is just a 5-step, I just like the play on it, is, the B is the brand story. Oh, so uncovering the story that actually makes a journalist stop scrolling. And,
Mhm.
you can use AI for this. Like we talked about this a little bit last week, was, a lot of entrepreneurs and people are using Claude and ChatGPT just as something to bounce ideas off of, to, you know, I use my husband for this. Like I'm like, hey, have any other ideas for so and so? Because he's just another human with a brain, but the AI is changing things. So you can
Mhm.
kind of bounce things off on your own and use it as like a think tank in a way. But just to think about, what story is going to make someone stop? What is it about you that is different and unique and kind of sets you apart from the pack? Because that is what's really special. And sometimes you're so close to yourself and your story and your brand that you kind of can't see what those differentiators.
Mhm.
If you talk to me, as a publicist, right away, I'm like, oh, I can think about 1,000. I'm like, this is different. This is unique. That's different. Parts of your story that maybe you're a little hesitant to share might
Mm.
be the thing that is really needing to come to surface and that can make you super relatable. I used to shy away from telling folks that I was a divorcee. I didn't know if that was something I should share. I remember also, I worked corporate, didn't share that I was pregnant for 6 months because I didn't
Mm.
want
Mhm.
to get mommy tracked or taken less seriously. And this was, that was just what I was in. And now I have found that just kind of owning those parts of my story make me different, make me
Yeah.
unique, make that producer call me back. And so the first is brand story. The second is the L is land the pitch, is really, like I was talking about, knowing what the media wants right now,
Yeah.
being cognizant of those timelines. I don't think that it's common knowledge to know, that if you pitch today, a digital outlet is booking 3 months from now. That's not
Right.
always common knowledge. You can certainly go on, you yourself go on a website and look at the editorial calendar for a particular outlet and kind of see, oh my goodness, like, for example, oh my goodness, they're already putting together a holiday gift guide in July for
Mm-hmm.
Real Simple magazine, right? And I think people are kind of shocked by some of those timelines because it does sound like a long leadway. But TV is very different, and so is podcasts. So the turnaround on that is very different. In
Right.
LA, I can pitch you today, and you can be on the news this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
New York City is like a 6 week sort of a timeline there. So that's just something that I know from being in the business for a long time, and it's not common knowledge, but there are ways to kind of figure that out on your own. So just being very aware of what is going to resonate right now with the media, what's going to take a little time to cook. Everything deserves to not be a generic blast. I really believe in business in general and communications, and not in hand curating everything and not having it all be generic. So finding ways in your pitching to maybe reference a past media placement with a particular journalist, following them on socials, and kind of just really learning who they are and how to serve them at the highest level can really do a lot for moving a pitch into an actual segment or an actual opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I build really, efficient media lists that by all means you can expand upon later, but kind of just really making sure that our pitches are really intentional. And it's easier to manage that way. So tracking them and then owning your message. That's the first O, which is just making sure that your talking points make sense, right? I do not want to put someone on TV with talking points that I wrote for them that don't flow easily from them. And it would be almost like if I put a very liberal client on Fox and expected them to resonate with the audience. That is not a good fit. So usually sitting with those talking points, if you have time, where time allows, to make sure that you're really positioning yourself where you want to be for that particular opportunity, makes a lot of sense. Like even for this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
I said to you, even though we kind of threw this together quickly, I'm like, can you just send me your questions in advance?
Right.
Not because I wanted to control the narrative, but because I wanted to think about what am I going to say?
Exactly.
Because you don't want to ramble. You don't want to, you don't want your clients to do that. So, and then the second O in the Bloom is, in addition to own your message, is outreach and relationships. And we've touched on that, but just really knowing that cold pitching can work. It can open the doors to relationships, but you've got to really nurture them. And pour into them. When I first got started in my consultancy, anyone who booked my client got a $5 Starbucks gift card, because I just, and I wasn't making a whole lot of money, but I just really wanted to send a message of thank you. Like I'm creating a future for my family through this business. This is a relationship that I value, and then the $5 gift card turned into, hey, every Christmas, I'm going to send that particular news station a nice basket. And, and just, I believe in that. It has definitely, watering relationships and remembering too that these are real people with their own lives going on. So if you do go and follow a particular journalist that you just really want an interview with, maybe a station or some outlet or some podcast, check in with them on the human stuff. If you saw they got married, congratulations. Like, oh my goodness. Or, hey, I saw you got an award. Congratulations. Like, don't always go to folks when you're just wanting something from them. Otherwise it feels super transactional, and they get enough of that in their day-to-day with that, super saturated inbox. And then the last for the Bloom framework, the Bloom method, is the M, and that's momentum. And that's just the lesson behind knowing that one placement is not the end game. It is supposed to be, one placement turning into many, so that your visibility is really compounding instead of just this one-time spike, of visitors to your website. You're really looking for a funnel, like a flow. Earned media can be, my goodness, like, I don't know, I'm getting a lot more attention. Even people in your network might start to notice if you're sharing these wins. This has happened before for clients of mine where they're like, man, hey, Jazz, I have someone for you to talk to, because my girlfriend that I've never told I was doing PR for is noticing that I'm doing something different, or I
Right.
have evolved into this new version of myself, because you really step into it. Like if you're going to do
Yeah.
it, step into it, and take it for what it is. And I think it's a really cool way to share with your people are rooting for you. Like maybe, my mom can only like my post so many times, and, can only comment so many times, but there's something to be said for like seeing the actual product of like the energetic push of what it is to use PR to tell stories, and to use
Right.
the media as a platform. And, and when you share those things, your wins, it's not a vanity metric. It's, I mean, for some people it can be, but it really is, hey, check this out. How cool is this? I've gotten to a point in my story where I'm so comfortable telling about it. Here it is. Hey, mom, here's this 45-minute podcast. Check it out. And then, you can splice one placement into like 30 pieces of content if you're really
Exactly.
doing it right. And so, that's one thing that I think is interesting, especially as like a solopreneur or as a small shop. You can only be in so many places at one time, but if you really understand how this media is going to work for you in a lot of different ways, it allows you to kind of show up simultaneously in different platforms and in front of different audiences. And I think it really lends to that credibility thing where we're talking about that you are the expert in your field. If you weren't, you wouldn't be invited to do these interviews, and you wouldn't be able to
Exactly.
speak, endlessly for 45 minutes or whatever on such and such topic. So it's really just about that credibility that it can give you, and the exposure, for sure. But yeah, everyone can do it. It's just, you need that system and you need a little bit of strategy. I think it's nice to get a little bit of verification, like when you do send a pitch out, that it landed. That's the,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes you send a pitch out and that angle, one of them just takes off and you're like, oh my goodness, I need to do more of talking about
About
that.
that. Exactly.
Because you want to know, like, what do people, I don't want to yap. And we were talking about the yap challenge, this thing that everyone's doing. You don't want to yap about the wrong thing, but I bet you someone wants to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I don't think that that thing would have happened to you, or that wouldn't be a part of the, your fabric of who you are. And not everybody's ready to share about parts of their story right away. Like I tell clients to listen to that, to lean into that. If it feels yucky, maybe we shouldn't be doing it. I had a client that thought she wanted to talk a lot about grief and about child loss. And then we got into it and she was just like, you're getting me a lot of opportunities. I don't want to do this every day. I don't want to relive this story over and
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
she really wanted to talk about, and I think it was an exercise for her, she really wanted to talk about resilience and
Right.
getting through that, and kind of her comeback story and all of that. And for her, that was healing, and so what you might be working your PR around initially can change kind of over the course of your campaign too. It can evolve into deeper topics, maybe more specialized topics. And what's appropriate for a 3 to 5 minute TV interview may not be, maybe you're kind of surface skimming, right? You can only go so deep, but a 45-minute podcast, you can go way deeper on some of those bigger topics.
Exactly.
So kind of when you're owning your message in that Bloom method, part of the talking points, part of it is really understanding the medium and who you're talking to, how much time you have, what the point of that particular, discussion is, and your call to action and what you're trying to push through should align with, really, it's not about you. It's really just about the listeners and making that media person's job easier. That's kind of how I always look at it. It's like, I just want to be really easy to work with, so that this is always going to be a funnel for me and my clients.
Absolutely. Well, I know that people can right now reach out to you and work with you one-on-one. They can hire you with a retainer. However, you also have a super cool opportunity that you and I have talked about isn't really being seen a whole lot, at least at the time of this recording.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd love for you to talk about this new opportunity and who it's a right fit for and what are they going to walk away with.
Yeah, so I'm super excited. I've had a lot of different sort of iterations of my journey and kind of what I've been looking to do with my consultancy. And I've changed the name a few times, I've rebranded, I've done all those things. But Bloom into the Spotlight is really about uh, planting seeds and watering them and nurturing things in growth. It's really about growth. And when I first kind of went into business for myself, I was a little nervous. I was like, "Gosh, is there a niche for what I could tell that there was definitely personal brands were having their time. People were
Mhm,
going and getting their, .com with their first and last name. And a lot
mhm,
of, I think COVID really pushed people into trying new things as far as, businesses and things go. Um, and when I first started, I wanted to do a done with you element instead of just the retainer program, but I didn't really know how to do it because I hadn't seen anyone do it. I'd never seen anyone build a group program for PR. Um,
mhm,
at all. I mean, I'd Google it, I'd look everywhere, I'd ask some of my colleagues, and everyone said the same thing. Stick with retainers, one offer, it's a high touch thing. It's very difficult to serve a group. Everyone has a different skill set and just everyone has a different message. It's not possible. And I, sat with it for a couple of years. And then just recently I said, you know what? I love teaching. I don't believe it. I don't believe it to be true. A lot of those same folks also said never offer a guarantee. Don't guarantee PR. You can't, guarantee a certain number of media placements. And I'm like, well, I mean, you should be able to. Like, let's think about this from the customer's point of view. Um, so I think, done with you is very different than DIY.
yeah,
DIY would be you going in front of your computer and just trying to wing it and figure it out and probably making quite a few mistakes along the way, getting
mhm,
frustrated, not sitting in your zone of genius and serving your clients and fulfilling, whatever it is you're working on all day long. Done with you is really, I'm imagining it's a small cohort. I'm launching
mhm,
it July 1st. I'm hoping it's 10 or so participants. I just started really kind of pushing this idea of what I'm building, but I'm imagining that it's really done with you, meaning let's work together for 6 months and let's really use that Bloom framework, what I know to be true after 20 years in the business. I'm guaranteeing a certain amount of placements, 3 to 5 placements in 60 days. I believe it can be done. But just having someone there with you to help you formulate those pitches,
mhm,
formulate your messaging, steer you away from maybe angles that I know aren't as sticky as they need to be, or helping to finesse that pitch, and then celebrating as the cohort, starts to experience some wins.
mhm,
I think will be very, very cool. And, my hope is that PR is accessible for businesses of all sizes. I don't believe that, I have kids and I think a lot about the ethics behind PR and kind of um, thinking about the narrative that we're creating in the news and what we turn on the TV. And I think that it should be a diversity of voices and budgets and skill sets. I don't think some of my best clients with the most powerful stories maybe weren't the best at delivering it at first. They needed a
mm,
little bit of media coaching. They needed, I had a client who is dyslexic who had a really important thing to say, but needed a little extra, help in delivering it. And so I'm excited, for this first group to launch. And I'm imagining that once you're done with that 6 month program, if you want to continue just for the group aspect, but you should really be able to pitch yourself confidently. And one of the other things I think that's important in this group program is that everyone comes in with a different skill sets and a different background and all of that, but there will be assets of the program that are super valuable. Like, here's a media list. Here's who I would go
mm,
to in this
mhm,
market. Here are some of my warmest relationships. As I'm working all day long, I have hot reactive media things that come through. So someone may say from the LA Times may say, hey, Jazz, do you
Mm-hmm.
have an expert in this? So adding my participants in my group program to my roster for those opportunities as they arise, I think is going to be a very powerful part of that
Absolutely.
program. And so I'm really excited. I'm excited to kind of do the thing that everyone said could not be done. And to do it really, really well, and to just have a different, a lot of my 20 years a lot of the success has been attributed to teachers along the way and people that were not gatekeepers and holding on to this information. They were very, I believe that there's enough pie to go around. There are enough podcasts in the world for
Mm-hmm.
everyone to have an interview every week. It's just, we may not know how to do it and go about, landing those things. And so, I think that there's enough media to go around, and I'm really looking to serve this particular group at a different level, and to kind of put on my teacher hat. I wrote and I co-authored a chapter of a book. It was published, Oxford Press put it out, on women in PR. And
Mm-hmm.
it was my first kind of realization that definitely want to teach at some point. And I always thought I had to do that through like a university or some sort of setting. And now I'm realizing, as you start to drink the Kool-Aid and work with, a lot of really interesting people, you're like, hey, I can just create the thing that I think I'm supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
So this founding cohort is going to be that. It's going to very much be, let's build this thing. Tell me how I can make it better. What do you need? How can I serve you? I'm going to keep it small, probably 10 participants or so at a time. And I'm excited to kind of disprove the myth that, you have to work with an agency or, in a one-on-one retainer situation. So more on that. I'm
Yeah.
excited for.
I'm excited too. And if you're watching this episode a year from now, 2 years from now, and you're reaching out and you're joining her amazing group, awesome. But if
Mhm.
you get an opportunity to be watching this episode in that first week or so that we are putting it out, guys, you don't understand the benefit of coming in on the ground floor of something, because you get a level of access, a level of voice that someone who's joining 2 years from now, 3 years from now, just doesn't get. They
Mhm.
will get a beautiful, refined product. They're going to get a beautiful, refined framework, but they're not going to get the same level of access. They're not
Yeah.
going to get the same level of being able to say, hey, this isn't working for me. This is working for me. Oh, I want more of this. This is incredible. And having those tweaks done in real time that
Mhm.
a founding member gets. And because she's
Yeah.
keeping this super small, if you're watching this episode, like, stop it right now and go look at the show notes and grab links to go find her, because it's going to fill up and you're going to be waiting and not be in on that ground floor. And so
Mhm.
this is just such an incredible opportunity, and you're going to be getting such value as that founding cohort that you just can't even understand unless you've been a member or have had your own founding cohort and understand how much access you get there versus when it is a refined, beautiful, proven product. Because obviously Jazz's PR is proven, but
Mhm.
that group cohort, when it becomes that proven product, it's going to have a different level of access than it does right now.
Yeah. And I think, something that I'm really looking forward to is really sharing a lot of my time saving tricks. Like, this is what I do.
Yes,
This is how I serve my clients at that $5,500 a month retainer level. And just saying, you want the information, run with it by all means. And don't, I think there's something very cool about, I think this is why writing coaches are really important. When you don't have to waste time, valuable time, spinning your wheels on something. If we're
exactly.
working together, it's like, hey, no, you're going down the wrong path. Let me just quickly adjust the
Exactly.
scales and let's go. Because I want this to be super successful. I can't wait to see the case studies at the end of this, founding cohort, where it's like,
Absolutely.
oh my gosh, hey, people are getting on TV that have never interviewed before without, a retainer situation, and just kind of knowing that we were able to do it, I think is going to be very, very cool. And then also I think, there's been a lot of talk around AI and just the ethics around it and how people are using it in their business. Publicists are definitely using AI. And so kind of helping folks to say, hey, yeah, go ahead and use that tool. It's just a tool in your toolbox. How do we humanize it? How do we use it
Yes.
efficiently, responsibly? How do we do it in a way that doesn't turn off, media, because they have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of rules about, AI use and things in their story building. So I'm excited to that's going to be interesting. The curriculum of the group will probably change over time as techniques change, as
Exactly.
the technology changes. And so that's not something that you can just step into and kind of just know how to do well. So I'm excited to kind of be a Sherpa in that way, to help shorten the distance between you pitching yourself and getting that yes. It should be immediate. We should start to see wins within the first month of the cohort, really just here's the Bloom method. Took me 20 years to learn it. I've finessed it, run with it, and let's see what we can do. So it's gonna be fun. I'm excited.
I love it. I love it. So, any final word of encouragement for an author who feels really invisible right now and is wanting to be seen for the right reasons?
Yeah, I think, if you feel invisible right now, it is not a reflection of your worth or the
That's
value of your
important to say.
story.
Yeah.
I, I've definitely been there before where it's kind of like, gosh, what am I doing here? Why is no one noticing? You've been working on the background on something and you feel a little invisible. And it just really might mean that, the right doors have just not opened yet for you. There is always something brewing for you. Life is happening for you. It usually is just that the right person has just not yet heard about you
Mhm.
or hasn't been exposed to you. When I first started my business, I was like, oh my gosh, no one, I'm not getting clients. I know there's a niche for this, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to market myself. And it just was that I wasn't findable. People were looking for someone like me, but they didn't know who is this person? Does this exist? And so, you already probably have the story inside of you,
Mhm.
the thing that it really matters inside of you, have the expertise. It's just that it hasn't been seen yet. And I truly believe that PR is a way to really get visible, to be more empowered in your message and your influence and your impact and things in your work that you're doing. So that's my word of encouragement is, if you feel invisible right now, it is not a reflection of your worth. It's just a matter of who's seen you. And maybe they just haven't seen you yet, but it's
Exactly. That is so good. And I want the listeners, if they take away nothing else from today, and there's so many good nuggets, you're going to have to watch this a couple times. But visibility isn't vanity, it's
mhm,
stewardship of your message.
mhm,
And you, as a listener, have written a book to reach people. PR is simply the bridge that gets it into the right hands.
mhm.
And so, Jasmine, where is the best place for listeners to connect with you and find out more about Bloom into the Spotlight?
Yeah, I would send everyone to my website, bloomintothespotlight.com. If you want to find me on socials, I'm on Instagram at Jasmine Bloemhof, Bloemhof. And just find me there, connect with me. It doesn't have to be very formal. There's lots of different, it's very easy to, navigate. Book a 20-minute clarity call with me if you need to just kind of talk through what the heck is possible for me.
Mm.
Sometimes it can be really helpful just to have someone say, oh no, you're ready. You just haven't had that, introduction yet to the media yet. So bloomintothespotlight.com or Instagram, Jasmine Bloemhof.
I love that. And I'm so excited to see more and more authors blooming into the spotlight
Mhm.
that haven't before.
Yeah,
And so
for
I
sure.
cannot wait to see the incredible case studies coming out of this group.
Thank
And
you
if
so
you're
much.
wondering, yes, if you're wondering how to even write the book that can start this whole flywheel happening, check out my free private podcast, The Right Start, at roseandpearl.net/get started. The link is always in the show notes. And until next time, I'm Dr. Carolyn Wiley, and you have been watching The Published Pearl. Thank you so much, Jazz, for being on today.
Thank you.
You're listening to the Published Pearl podcast, where your message becomes the book that opens doors your hustle never could. This podcast is produced by Rose and Pearl Publishing and powered by peppermint mocha lattes and a slightly aggressive belief that your book is not optional.